Small cars tend to have their engines at the front and it drives the front wheels. But the new Renault Twingo isn't like normal small cars, because just like a Porsche 911, its engine is actually at the back and it drives the rear wheels. Now, I wouldn't normally show you an engine on car bike because that's a bit too techy, but I'm going to make an exception in this case because look, there's the engine. It's in the back. There are two benefits of having the engine in the back. The first is that it has allowed Renault to make the new Twingo a very compact car. Despite being 10 centimetres shorter on the outside than the old Twingo, it's actually 22 centimetres longer inside the cabin. And this makes it surprisingly practical. Let's start with the boot. Now, on paper, it's not particularly big. It's actually smaller than that of all of its city car rivals, and that's because you've got the engine underneath the boot floor. But with other city cars, the boots, yes, they're deep, but they don't go back particularly far, so sometimes it can be a struggle fitting square items in, whereas with a Twingo, it's actually better than you think. First of all, you've got no low lip to lift stuff over, and the boot does go back quite a decent way for this type of vehicle. I should also point this out. You first look at the parcel shelf and think, blimey heck, that's flimsy. But because it's paper thin, when you remove it, you can actually slide it and keep it stored out of the way underneath items in the boot, and that's really handy. You might be wondering what the heck this thing is, and no, it's not a hammock for a cat. It's actually a special storage pouch. You actually have to pay £17.50 extra for that, and if you ask me, it's a bit useless. Now, if you want to make the boot bigger, you can actually do this neat little trick. If you release the seat, you can then fold this arm out, lock the seat back down, and it increases the boot size, and then it's comparable to its class rivals. We'll just get into the back because I want to show you a problem with having the seat in that position, and that's that you have to sit bolt upright, and it's rather uncomfy. Even kids, they won't like that, so I'll just pop that back down to a more comfortable position. There we go. So you can check out space here in the back seat. Now, first of all, knee room for a city car is actually pretty good. Headroom on this particular car, well, it's a bit tight for me. I'm 5'11". The reason it's tight is because it's got this panoramic sunroof, which I'll show you a little bit later on. If you don't have this on the car, then actually headroom is fine for adults back here. And I do want to show you something, because this particular car, if you buy a city car, you might be thinking, you know, how am I going to live with it every day? Could it be a little bit impractical? Well, with this one, when you fold down the rear seats, you get a flat load floor. That's a good thing, but this is even better. Look at this. If you want to carry really long items, such as, I don't know, a wardrobe back from IKEA or something, then you can fold down the front seat and you've got loads of space. It's really practical. That's a feature you don't get on other city cars. There are, however, other city cars which let you personalise their looks, but the Twingo has one of the widest range of styling options, and this extends to the interior, which is just as cool as the outside. All Twingos also come with Renault's excellent R&Go system. Now, what that does is it lets you download an app from the internet, and it allows you to control some of the car's functions. For instance, you press that button there, you can look at various trip information for the car. You can obviously use your phone. You can also stream your music, as you can listen to digital radio, internet radio, but it also includes satellite navigation for free. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this system is as good as it gets in any car at any price. Now, I'm going to give you a useful bit of buying advice. Do not buy the entry-level Twingo. You want to step up to the mid-level Play version, because it adds stuff such as air conditioning, which is vital on any car of any size. It also adds height adjustment for the driver's seat, which once again is a really useful feature. This particular car is actually the range-topping dynamic model, and it has stuff such as stop-start for the engine, which will save you a few mpg, and a lane departure warning system. But I wouldn't bother spending the extra on this range-topping dynamic. I would save some cash and instead spend it on this awesome panoramic sunroof. And yes, I did say it does affect headspace in the back, but the rear passengers worry about. You just get and enjoy the fact that you can wind the roof all the way back and make this Twingo feel like a convertible. And when it's sunny like today, that's a really, really great feature. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I said there were two benefits to having the engine in the back of the car, but I only mentioned the practicality. Well, the other one is manoeuvrability, because you haven't got the engine at the front, which means there's no drive shafts going to the front wheels. It means that Renault has been able to fit this car with steering that turns at a greater angle than it does in almost any other car. The Twingo has a turning circle of just 8.6 metres, which is only bettered by the titchy Toyota IQ and a London taxi. As well as being great for making U-turns, it means the Twingo is very easy to parallel park. When you combine that manoeuvrability with a raised driving position, which gives you a good view out, some nice light controls, what you have is a car that is absolutely brilliant for driving around town. The trouble is that when you get out of town and start going a bit faster, you begin to notice some of the car's problems, such as how it bobs about over bumps when you're going a little bit quickly, which brings us on to the performance. Take the engines, for example. The one in this car is a 1 litre 3-cylinder with just 70 horsepower, but actually round town it feels nippy enough because the gearing's nice and low. The problem is that when you go out on the motorway, it feels completely out of its depth, because 0 to 60 miles an hour takes 14.5 seconds. So if you want to overtake someone, you have to thrash this engine to within an inch of its life, and that does start to affect fuel economy. In fact, I reset the car's trip computer earlier today, so shall we see what I'm actually doing now? It says 33.6 miles per gallon averaging, and Renault actually claim this car will do around 65 miles per gallon, so it's a little bit off the mark, isn't it? Later on, after we'd finished filming the reviews, with some careful driving, I managed to eke an extra 4 miles per gallon out of the car. But even then, it was still returning under 40 miles per gallon, which is a little bit poor in a car such as this. If you plan to drive on the motorway quite a lot, you're going to need the 900cc turbocharged engine. It has 90 horsepower, can do 0 to 60 in 10.8 seconds, which is pretty impressive for a city car, and it can hold its own on the motorway. The only thing is that this car actually on the motorway at high speed, you do get quite a bit of wind whistle. And also in town, that turbocharged engine isn't actually as good as the lower powered naturally aspirated engine, because when you pull away from a junction, it has quite a bit of turbo lag. So you're pulling out, the car hesitates, and then it finally takes off. And when you do rev it out, the engine actually makes quite a lot of noise. And if you want to keep your eye on the revs, there's no rev counter there on the instrument binnacle. You can only get one here on your mobile phone, which means that you have to take your eyes off the road and look down here. Another problem with the turbo car is that it actually has variable rate steering, and that is designed to make the car feel more responsive, but it just feels weird and artificial. Really, this Twingo is not as much fun to drive as I thought it would be. You've got the engine at the back, it's rear-wheel drive, and like I said earlier, that's the same configuration as a Porsche 911, and in theory, that should be a fun handling chassis. But it's just not. It's actually less fun to drive than a lot of front-wheel drive, front-engine city cars, such as the Hyundai i10 and the Volkswagen Up. And I know what you're saying, city cars aren't supposed to be fun, but the very best ones are. Another problem with the Twingo is that it is more expensive than other city cars, and Renault will charge you extra for those personalisation options such as these decals, and yellow colour's nice as well, but if you notice, look, it seems to attract all the flies. Bigger problem is that, look at that, you've got pop-out rear windows. Now that is common on some other city cars, but you don't have that with a Kia Picanto. It has proper wind-down rear windows, and while the cubby spaces in the car are actually good, on lower models, you have to pay extra if you want rear door bins. I mean, why is that? Speaking of storage, I think there's been a bit of a missed opportunity here, because obviously engine's in the back, which means that what is here under the bonnet, well, I'll just show you now, and it's not actually that hard to remove the bonnet. You just do that, and there we go. Pull it out like that, and we've got the fluids and the battery, but I just think that they maybe could have created a mini boot or something there so you can just store some stuff under the bonnet, but they haven't done that. Seems like a bit of a shame. Despite this, the Twingo is still a very clever little city car, and it looks great as well, doesn't it? And of course, it's practical and extremely manoeuvrable in town. But if you're in the market for this kind of car, you should still check out our video reviews of its main rivals, such as the Car Buyer Car of the Year for 2014, the Hyundai i10, by clicking up here. Click down here to watch our review of the Volkswagen Up. If you click down here, you can see our very latest video review. If you click up there on our logo, you can subscribe to our channel.